New Landings Job Chat is brought to you in part by the Prosperity Advisory Group, the next step in your financial future. And by the EBS Group, with an unparalleled background in Oracle solutions and services.
There is a predominance of nonprofit organizations in Kansas City as well as the rest of the country, and they have a huge impact on their populations. That is the subject of today's Job Chat. Hello, I am Hector Silva, along with Don Apple.
Hector, the world of nonprofit is kind of a world of its own. The rules of focus, I guess, the rules and focus are different, so let's find out how they're different.
Our guest today is Michelle Davis, the Executive Director of Nonprofit Connect. Welcome.
Thank you.
Michelle has been the Executive Director of Nonprofit Connect since 2005. Nonprofit Connect, with 1,600 members, links the nonprofit community to education, resources, and networking so organizations can more effectively achieve their missions. Prior to joining Nonprofit Connect, Michelle spent 4 years at the national headquarters of the National Kidney Foundation as a fundraising consultant and most recently as the National Director of Training. Michelle also spent 3 years at the corporate headquarters of Ferrellgas as a member on Project Renaissance, a strategic restructuring of Ferrellgas's business functions to increase efficiency and profitability. Michelle is a member of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce Centurions class of 2008 and Ingram's magazine's Top 40 Under 40 class of 2007. And she served on the board of directors of Synergy Services and Nonprofit Missouri. Michelle, welcome to Job Chat.
Thank you for having me here.
Michelle, in the introduction, I mentioned that there was a predominance of nonprofit organizations. Mm-hmm. How many nonprofits are in the Kansas City area alone?
Well, in the Kansas City area, there are 7,500 nonprofit organizations. When you look at nonprofit organizations with budgets more than $25,000, we still have 3,400 nonprofits in Kansas City, Missouri.
Let me ask you this. When we say nonprofit, what are we talking about?
We are talking about any 501c designated organization. So we are talking about the charitable organizations that you traditionally think about, the ones that are feeding the homeless or helping pets or the environment. But we're also talking about organizations that fit the healthcare world, like St. Luke's Hospital or Children's Mercy Hospital, or in education, William Jewell College or the University of Missouri Kansas City. They are all nonprofit organizations as well.
So to become a nonprofit, you just don't put a sign out and say I'm a nonprofit. You have to get it officially designated as a nonprofit.
Absolutely. Through the IRS. So you have to file paperwork with the IRS designating that you want to be a 501c charitable organization, and you have to talk about what your mission is in the community, and then they go through a vetting process, and not everyone that applies to be a nonprofit organization is approved to do that. So it's quite a process through the IRS to do that.
And then that's the process that allows you to be able to go out for grants and other things to fund the work that you're doing.
And there are different types of nonprofit organizations. So there are 501c3 organizations, which are generally the charities that everyone thinks of. And those are the organizations that when you make a donation to them, then you get to write it off your taxes. There are other nonprofit organizations, 501c4s and 501c6, which are more member-serving associations or business organizations like the Chamber of Commerce, that when you pay your Chamber of Commerce dues, you don't get to write off your donation. And the reason is because those C4s and 6s actually have the power to participate in lobbying. And so because they have the power to participate in lobbying, then you no longer get to make those tax deductions.
You said there were 7,500 nonprofits in Kansas City.
Absolutely.
How does that compare with other cities in the Midwest?
It's about the same as other cities in the Midwest. We have per capita 1.8 nonprofits for every 1,000 people. In St. Louis, it's 1.5. In Chicago, it's 1.5 as well. Minneapolis, it's 2. per every 1,000 people. So we're really kind of in the middle of some of our counterparts. Denver is also a city that has 2 per every 1,000 people. So we're really about in the middle of our counterparts here in the Midwest.
Okay. So tell us about the various types of nonprofits. You touched on it just a bit earlier. Can you expand on that just
Yeah, there are actually really kind of 2 basic types of nonprofits. Those are those that serve the public, and those are the charities that we most often think about. So whether they're health services, or they provide education, or arts and culture, or religious organizations, those are all the public serving organizations. And then there are those that are member serving organizations, more of your social or fraternal organizations, your business or professional associations. So they really, break down in those 2 ways. Within the subsectors then, especially as we look at those that are public serving, we think about arts and culture organizations. So arts and culture might be the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art. Culture is more like the Kansas City Zoo. Okay. In healthcare, we talked about the hospitals, also like the free health clinics in our community. Those are health organizations. In education, it's not just the universities, but a lot of the charter schools are also 501c3 organizations. Or if someone, Horizon Academy is an organization in our community, that a school that serves kids with disabilities, learning disabilities. And so that would be an example of education. Social services is what we're most familiar with, the Salvation Armies and the Boys and Girls Club, those organizations. Then there's also international organizations. We're blessed here in Kansas City that we have several international, national headquarters of international organizations. Outreach International is based in Kansas City. Water.org is based in Kansas City. And then there are, Animals in the Environment. Bridging the Gap is an environmental organization. Wayside Waifs is a great animal serving organization in our community. And then there's also community and economic development. So organizations that are working on, for example, Main Core is a nonprofit organization that really focuses on the development of the main streets community and the businesses and the people that live in that community. So, there really are such a variety of nonprofit organizations that people can interact with and participate with.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And you're talking about some organizations that seem to be huge.
Right.
And others not so large.
Absolutely.
How does it break down as far as size of organizations?
Right. Well, the size of organizations, is all over the place, and it's not what you would assume. You would assume that lots of organizations, or when people think of charities, that they're real small kind of organizations. When we look at it by staffing size, only 22% have 1 to 5 employees. Okay, so those are the very tiniest of agencies. The majority, almost a third of agencies in Kansas City have between 21 and 100 employees. Another 16% have more than 100 employees. So especially when you think about institutions like Children's Mercy and University of Kansas Hospital and the colleges and universities, the other colleges and universities, even other organizations like the organization Synergy Services, where I serve on the board. We have multiple programs that we run. We have over 100 employees that are working, delivering programs, whether it's to women who are suffering domestic violence, or kids that are homeless, or people that are there for mental health counseling. So, they have very large, staff. So to think that most nonprofits are just small little agencies that don't employ a lot of people, is unfortunately, not accurate. What's an interesting fact is that nonprofit organizations employ 7% of the workforce in the United States.
Well, you have certainly dispelled the myth of being small.
The other interesting thing about them is in Kansas City alone, nonprofit organizations are responsible for almost $11 billion in revenue.
$11 billion in revenue. Now, although the size of the staff may be different,
right,
the funding that they get, I'm sure, is different also.
Right.
And there must be a difference in the amounts that each one gets.
Absolutely. And it's really up to the organization and how they have how they have developed their income strategy. So, nonprofit organizations really get funding from a variety of places. Many of them do get grants, and sometimes they're grants from private foundations or the government. And then there are also those then that go after private donations, whether it's from individuals primarily. Then they also do fundraising events where they're interacting with the public. And then many nonprofit organizations have developed earned income strategies, where there is some piece of what they do that helps provide income to the organization. Yesterday I was with some folks from the Kansas City Sports Commission, and they run marathons and walks all over the city. So to help facilitate their business, they developed an online registration tool. They now resell that to other nonprofits that don't have the capacity to develop that kind of tool. And so it's saving efficiency for those smaller agencies because they're able to get a turnkey product, but it's a revenue generator for the Kansas City Sports Commission. It's the same way with another organization, part of the KC SourceLink, that helps, it's a nonprofit that helps small businesses develop. They developed a tool that allows small business owners in the Kansas City area to go in and look for help with services they need. Maybe I need help writing a marketing plan, or maybe I need help putting together my financial statements. So they can find access to these resources. They went to all the time and expense of building this infrastructure, and now as an earned income strategy, they resell it to small business administration offices in other communities around the country. So nonprofits know that as funding has gotten tighter and as charitable contributions have not necessarily declined that much, but kind of just held steady, that they have to have other ways, especially as the demand for services has increased, to get money in the door. And so these earned income strategies are a really great way for nonprofits to get money in.
I know that with the economy the way it is, there are a number of nonprofits that unfortunately have had to shut their doors and are not there to help the people that they were helping before. So donations and all of these fundraisers become that much more important in this day than they were in the past.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, when you were talking about the staff before, gender-wise, how does that break down? Is there a
It is.
breakdown?
It's really interesting. And when you look at the sector as a whole, 72% of the people that work in nonprofits are women. And when you look at management positions, 58% of the people that hold management positions in nonprofits are women. So many women really see it as a very viable career path and a way for them, to really advance their career. The interesting part of it is that it flips a little bit when you get to the largest agencies. So when you get to the very large organizations, then 70% of the top leadership in those very large agencies are male. So it's interesting to see how that flips.
But it's safe to say that there are opportunities for both.
Absolutely. There are definitely opportunities for both, but especially for women, one of the things that's great about working in the sector is that it really does, open up access. As an executive director of a nonprofit agency, I'm oftentimes going in and meeting with the heads of large companies in town, asking for donations. And that might not be an opportunity that I've always been afforded, in the for-profit world, is meeting with the heads of major companies in the community. So, it really is a great career advancement opportunity for women.
Well, it's definitely a place where you can showcase your skills, because I'm sure that you do more than just one thing.
You absolutely do. Yeah. The interesting part about I've worked in both, and the interesting part about working in the nonprofit sector is that you really, really do wear multiple hats. And have the opportunity to do a wide variety of things. And for some people that really like to focus on one task, then maybe a career in the nonprofit sector is not the best thing. But you have to be able to juggle multiple things and be talented, at a variety of things. So
let's talk about staffing. How do those layers get created?
Well, it really is interesting because when a nonprofit organization starts, generally most nonprofit organizations are started by a team of volunteers that are really dedicated to whatever that mission is that they are completing through this organization in the community. And so as they begin to fundraise, they will generally, they'll start all the work as a team of volunteers. But as they begin to fundraise and raise funds for the cause, then they'll usually add what they would call an executive director. And that person is responsible for everything. So they're responsible for program delivery, they're responsible for the books, they're responsible for managing the volunteers and the board, they're responsible for marketing, all of those tasks. And then as the organization tends to grow, as this executive director and the board are fundraising, then they usually get in a position where you'll see them add maybe an administrative assistant. So that helps allow them to focus on more strategic issues and let some of the routine work be managed by an administrator. Then as they continue to grow in staff size, what we next see is that they then add a program person. Because it's a mission-focused organization, we need someone else in here to make sure that we really are doing the most of that good thing that we say we're doing in the community. And then as funds continue to add, then they'll add a fundraiser, because now as we're growing, we need to bring more money in the door so that we can do more of that good work. And then as they grow, what we normally see then is they'll either add more program people or they'll begin to add marketing and communications people to help them get the word out. So I think what you can sense is that, as we describe that oftentimes many people, if I'm that fundraising person, I'm probably doing the marketing person until we get large enough to add a marketing person. And I think the other thing that's important to think about it is, if I'm a marketing professional and I want to work in this nonprofit sector, to think that I'm going to go work for a very small nonprofit that's maybe a grassroots organization really isn't realistic, because they're not at a place where they have the budget or the capacity to hire someone like that. So I think that's just something to think about when you think about your skills that you have and where you would want to work in the sector, to be mindful of kind of what the opportunities are.
You mentioned one word in there that piqued my interest, and that was board. Mm-hmm. I know that you have to have a board of directors or else you can't even get your designation. But how do you pick that board? How important is that board to the organization, and what's their main responsibility? The
board of directors is the most important part of a nonprofit organization. I even have a friend who's a funder who says that she feels like the board development or the nominating committee that picks the board is the most important committee in an organization, because they really set the tone for how the organization is going to be managed and run. And so what we see is that many nonprofit organizations, what the best practice is that they should be doing is that they should really be doing what we call like a trait and skills analysis, where they say to help our organization grow and fulfill the mission, what types of people do we need on the board? What skills are we looking for? So we need people with a financial background, so they can help make sure that we're managing, that we're able to understand the financial statements and that those are managed well. Maybe we need people with a marketing background. Maybe we don't have any marketing staff, so it's important for us to have people with a marketing mindset on our board. Maybe we need someone with a legal background, so that we make sure that we're following the laws appropriately. In organizations maybe that are looking for to build an office or establish an office, they might recruit people with a real estate background on their board. So that really it's about the skills that you bring to the table to help the organization execute its mission. And then what we really hope too is that there's real diversity. Okay, because what we used to see is that maybe someone was sitting on the board and they recruited other family members maybe to sit on the board, or close friends. The problem is that you all know the same group of people. So when it's time to go out and invite people to that fundraising event or to ask people for money, if you all know the same people and run in the same circles, your capacity to fundraise is limited. So we really encourage nonprofit organizations to, whether it's occupational diversity, whether it's gender diversity, whether it's ethnic diversity, whether it's diversity by the part of the city that you live in, that you really make sure that you have a diverse board, so that you're really able to maximize the connections you're making in the community.
A melting pot, as
Absolutely.
it were. Okay.
Absolutely.
But even when the board does set direction or strategy, it still comes back to the staff
to execute. It does.
And
there really
important.
Is a difference. There are generally what we call two types of boards. One is called a working board, and one is more of a governance board. And working boards still have a governance oversight responsibility, but those are in the very small startup organizations where you might be asked to go out, and recruit people to, to work on a project, or you might be sitting in the room for the program, running registration. And that's what happens in the very smallest of the organizations. But as they grow and evolve, then you get to be in a place where you're making more strategic decisions and really making more, especially fundraising asks for the organization. So.
Well, Michelle, we really want to thank you for taking the time to give us this in-depth look at nonprofits. And even though we're talking about the Kansas City area, this is something that throughout the country works pretty much the same.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we will have Michelle back with us again, and this time we will talk about careers in nonprofit. Thank you so much, Michelle.
And Michelle, if someone wanted to get in touch with you for additional information, how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. Nonprofit Connect has a great website. It is npconnect.org. So you can find us on the website. You could also email me at mdavis@npconnect.org.
Okay, very good. And of course, wanted to remind you as well that all of our job chats are available on our website, newlandingsjobchat.org. Just click on the Past Chats button.
And as always, we thank you for listening, and until next time, may your days be full of health, happiness, and success.